Hi everyone, so happy you're all here today. My name's Mick Mann and I would like to start by introducing our guests. Let's start with Valter Adão, Benjamin Marais, David Rozzio, Mehmood Khan, Manny Teixeira, and Naomi Snyman. Thanks so much for being here today, guys. We're very excited. And as leaders of our industries, and by using exponential thinking and by using exponential technology, we really have the opportunity to solve these global grand challenges and equip our children to thrive in the future with this mindset. So with that, let's jump right into it. Let's get down to the basics. Valter, you guys, as Deloitte, joined SingularityU South Africa Summit last year in 2017. Can you tell us why you've partnered and come along the journey for this year?
So Mick, the partnership of Deloitte with SingularityU Summit South Africa for 2018 is a natural progression from our participation and partnership last year. It's also an extension of our partnership with Singularity University worldwide, where you have two leading organizations in their respective fields coming together to provide a phenomenal impact on the customers and organizations that they service. In addition to that, the themes of innovation, digital transformation, the incorporation of exponential technologies into businesses is of critical importance to us. It's how we are assisting our clients to thrive and grow in these tumultuous times, and at the same time keeping ourselves relevant.
David, I mean, what was the aha moment for you? You attended the summit last year.
I did, and it was I did on a personal level actually last year to come to the summit, and it was an amazing moment for me. I was not probably the father coming back to his son actually last year to tell everything during the night, but I came back to all my team, to be honest, and I said this year I want to be part of it, and I want that HP can demonstrate all our innovation journey actually is part of this exactly same moment of the 6D of the Singularity University, and I think we are into it, and would like to really participate in this journey, especially for Africa.
And Mehmood, do you want to tell us a little bit about what for you is exponential technology, and why is it so important to bring it to South Africa and Africa?
Well, I think with all the challenges we have in Africa, we've already seen Africa leapfrog other regions using technology, and that continues to be the case. And Singularity gives us a huge opportunity to collaborate, because at SAP we believe we can't do this on our own. No organization, no country, no person can do this on its own. So this gives everybody an opportunity to figure out solutions for the continent where we can all actually, create a better life for people.
Awesome. I mean, do you think there's value in this power of the crowd, of all these captains of industry and these organizations coming together to try and bring this way of thinking to South Africa?
No, definitely. I mean, if I look at just the industry we operating at the moment as Liberty and part of Standard Bank, I mean, collaboration is very key. And then with all the partners around it, I mean, technology nowadays, if you think back, if you have to say to insurance or financial industry that you have to open up your bank or your environment to let other people connect to and share your information and data, they would have gone crazy and told you you're nuts. The opposite is happening now, and I think through Singularity University, again, the collaboration and opening up actually is key, within the parameters of regulatory, obviously, and all of that, but that's how we're going to change South Africa and solve the problems.
And I mean, you guys are taking this blockchain thing quite seriously.
We are.
And I mean, with regulation, as you were just saying, how are you seeing that as a major factor for the bank?
So regulation is both our friend and our foe sometimes, because we need regulation to into new technologies, for example, cryptocurrencies into the system, right? But at the same time, regulation plays such an important role in terms of how we protect consumers, how we protect investors, and how we protect financial stability, for example. And really, to Benjamin's point, collaboration with governments, with our regulatory parties, such as the Reserve Bank, the FEC, and the FSCA, is so important for us, as we need to drive these things through partnerships, as opposed to think that we will solve the world's problems all by ourselves.
Exactly. And Manny, I mean, what do you think we're going to need to get this right in our industries? What's going to be the big, grand, bold ideas that are going to help us achieve this?
Well, I suppose it circles back to why Singularity University is, and what we're trying to do through that is a change in mindset, is a shift in how we approach today's problems, not utilizing existing business models and existing thinking. when you look at the 6Ds, those are easily thrown around terms. You know, every company's got a disruption strategy, and they've got a big data strategy and an IA strategy. And I've got to be brutally honest, most big companies don't have their heads wrapped around it yet. You know, it's nice terms to talk about and work with, but if you come back into the core business from a process, procedure, bureaucracy point of view, it just doesn't exist or manifest there. So our big challenge is, if you're asking what do we need to get right here, I think it's fine at a senior level executive, they say this is what we've got to be doing, but we've got to question ourselves and go back into organizations and say, what processes do we need to start breaking down to allow these things to manifest? Because if you don't change that, we're just going to become the dinosaurs of old. You know, you start reading those Fortune 500 things. You know, 60 years ago, a Fortune 500 company was there. 30 years later, I mean, I can't remember the latest stats, but I think it's like less than 20% of the Fortune 500 companies from 10 years ago are still on that list. And that's the danger big companies face. We're both the enablers and facilitators of it. If you look at somebody like MTN as a telco, we're the base for exponential growth in Africa. But we also the dinosaur in many ways, and we've got to find a way of bridging that gap, taking use of our base and challenging our own businesses and processes. So how do we extract value out of that from a consumer point of view? So it's a wonderful time to try and get these things done, but we've got to change our mindsets. I think it's got to start there.
Absolutely. I mean, do you see any of these industries converging?
So the topic of industry convergence has been around for a long time, and I suppose we will see some industries coming together to create new mega industries, but what I'm seeing more of at the moment is organizations that are in a specific industry that have developed hard or soft assets, or IP for that matter, that can be used in another industry, now moving across into a new industry. It's not resulting in convergence, but it's the barriers of entry, the difficulty to move into a new space are being slowly removed.
So if you can take your industry and put it in another vertical, or your capability.
Correct. It's the old construct of adjacent innovation. Let's think of a practical example. You've got an organization that does heavy manufacturing, right? And a critical component to heavy manufacturing is the consumption of water. So these organizations, because of their responsibility in dealing with that asset, have learned how to repurpose water, reuse water, rehabilitate water. So they've developed great tech around water. Now, what stops them from becoming a water business? It's a decision. It's a decision to say we're going to move into the water space, and perhaps where we are now with exponential technologies, we don't have to move it into the water space in the traditional sense that says we're going to build water infrastructure. It's about bringing technology that helps us repurpose and rehabilitate water, or to be more careful in how we consume water. So the whole construct of water tech. So I'm seeing a lot more of that at the moment than the typical industry convergence, which was spoken a lot about.
And I mean, that's happening in your industry, right?
Sure. There is convergence in industry. When we talk about manufacturing and about this topic, in our view, what we see, we invested a lot into 3D printing, into 3D printing technology, and we see a lot of convergence to all the technology around. When we talk about AI, when you talk about blockchain, to manage, for example, the IP, how do you manage as well an open platform in terms of making the right materials inside that can be leveraged with design, but you can manage the IP inside. How do you use blockchain part of it? There's a lot of convergence of all this exponential technology that brings to disrupt completely the traditional manufacturing today. And we see that coming, and I think probably in the next 5 to 10 years, I think you will see a different traditional manufacturing being completely disrupted. I
mean, it's completely, you guys have shifted from normal printing to 3D printing. Sure. It's quite a massive transformation.
And that's a big transformation. We are talking about the 6D, obviously from a Singularity University, but we establish our business for this same logic of maintaining a core business, which is making sure we drive our core business and succeed, making sure we drive the growth for the future of 1 to 5 years, and making sure that we define the future for the next, let's say, 10 to 15 years. And this is where we design, I would say, the future of using new exponential technology, and where we invested in 3D printing, but as well in VR and AR, and what we call the blended reality, I would say, logic. How do we bring physical to digital and digital to physical? And this is our future view, and this is how we think the exponential technology into this aspect will disrupt completely, I would say, the market. And we target the manufacturing, but we target as well healthcare, we target as well other vertical and sector that will be disrupted completely by such technology.
And how big is this 3D printing manufacturing market?
I mean, the size of the manufacturing market overall worldwide is like $12 trillion in the world. So it's huge. It's a huge manufacturing business that needs to be disrupted. Today, the biggest size of the market that we see that people are touching is mainly on polymers and plastics. But the biggest chunk of the market is around metal. And I think metal will come as well And there is already technology coming onto the market, but the pace as well that we see is fully exponential into the new technology coming in, and as well the pace of new materials coming into this technology. So
you're seeing a lot of new retail brands that are getting into the space as well, what you were mentioning around footwear.
Yeah, I think, technology makes it easier for people to add new capabilities to their businesses a lot quicker. So we're finding telcos talking to us about building a bank, or banks talking to us about building a telco, or retailers talking to us about building a distribution business. I mean, these things are happening much quicker. And the reason for that is today you can actually, with the technology that we have, build a bank in 6 months, or have a retailer. Let me give you a good example, Uganda. And probably enabled by our good friends at MTN because of the infrastructure that's there. We had a guy who started in his garage as a retailer. Today, he turns over $10 million. This is maybe 2 years after he started. And he has absolutely no IT infrastructure. He runs his entire company off a mobile phone. The reason is because you can actually, you've got the infrastructure. We actually have the infrastructure in Africa, and now we can put those capabilities down, so it's happening much quicker, right? And that's why you're seeing a lot of traditional businesses trying to get into new spaces, because the traditional way of being a retailer, being a bank, or being a telco, or even an IT company is changing dramatically. So unless brands like these footwear brands or apparel retailers can give you something different, we all going to be, somebody said dinosaur. I think that's the challenge that we have, because this guy that started his garage is now doing $10 million after 2 years. He's much more flexible than our big retailers, right? I don't have to put all that investment in. So that for me is, I think, where a lot of the innovation is going to come. Those little guys who have a completely different way of thinking, don't have the built-in bureaucracy, and can do things much quicker than anybody else.
So is it about learning to unlearn? Is it about learning, it's like just forgetting the old process, forgetting the legacy system and bringing it back to learning from the future?
Yeah, I think, and to Manny's point before, how we need to rethink our own business models. And I think on the topic of convergence, something like MTN and a Standard Bank is such a beautiful example of that in relation to future-proofing Africa. Future-proofing Africa, given the amazing problem that we have, and I say amazing because of the scale of it, in terms of having people access financial services, we as a M&O and a bank need to think about how do we disrupt our own businesses, how do we relearn and unlearn what we thought a bank would do and what a telco would do in the space in terms of working together. And for the purposes of solving financial inclusion, this is the best and the easiest and the most scalable way to do that. But unlearning, and I think just rethinking and reflecting on our role in our ecosystems is the first point in terms of what are we really here to solve for? What is our role in society?
And I think, I think it's a very important point. Sometimes we can see the logical construct of like a bank and an M&O coming together, but then we try and force it.
Yeah.
We try and force a solution out of it because we think we know best.
An arranged marriage.
And we think we know what the consumer wants. Where, again, if we're brutally honest, a lot of the innovation, particularly out of Africa, is via happenstance. I mean, mobile money was not a telco innovation. It was a need out of Kenya that M-Pesa emerged from, the same story out of Uganda. And we see that consistency. And I think our role and our mindset, the unlearning we have to do is to say, we don't know everything. We might have been pioneers, and telcos were pioneers, but we don't know everything. Let's take a step back, and rather than trying to force something, let's see where the market wants to go. Let's remove the friction from it. And generally, we are the friction. The banks are the friction, the telcos are the friction. That's where the real prompt comes in. And people talk about disruption, again, as this throwaway term. But what does that actually mean? You raised an example again. And for me, the best term I've seen around it personally is the GSMA term says permissionless innovation. If you look at the Facebooks, Googles, Amazon, they didn't get permission from anybody. So yes, regulatory is important. But if we start from a typical corporate mindset, you've got to get like policy permissions, process permissions,
governance.
Governance through 3 tiers of committee to decide. The world doesn't work that way. Consumers don't work that way. And in Africa in particular, nobody understands Africa's problems as best as Africans themselves and permission. Our role as big corporates is to say, how do we make that frictionless? How do we provide platforms for these people to go play?
What I've seen, however, though, is when the corporate, let's call them giants, the people who have the big market share, want to disrupt, I find that regulators actually can help with that process if you make enough of a case. I mean, I'll give you an example. In South Africa, the first movers to cloud from a business application, remember, this means moving your HR data, moving your procurement data, moving all of this very important information onto the cloud, was actually the financial services industry, because it was so well regulated and because you actually had, you know, a kind of stepwise approach, and as long as you took the lead, you can help. Now, of course, most of Africa doesn't necessarily have the regulation we have in the industry, but where we do have it, I think if we take the lead, regulators are reactive by definition, right? They're never going to come and say, hey guys, this is how we're going to create new industries. We have to create that ourselves.
Look, so I think the challenge that we face is that it's very easy to sit and talk about disruption and innovation, but when you're sitting at the helm of a large organization with a tremendous amount of shareholder value and market equity and market cap, there's a lot to lose. And the biggest challenges I believe that our leaders face inside organizations is that nothing that they've accumulated from an experience perspective, education, learnings, etc., is applicable into what they need to think, how they need to think about their business into the future. It's a hell of a challenge. And just take a look at the cryptocurrency debate at the moment. You've got one part of the market that says this is the greatest thing to mankind. The other one says that this is the biggest scam of all time. And so we're in a place now where you know, it's difficult to decide to be pioneering or to be a fast follower or watch this thing play out, because if you move too quickly, you could be moving on the wrong thing, and if you wait, it could be too late. So we're moving into a world where I think leaders need to be proactively reactive. So you've got to try and eliminate as much cynicism out the system, because typically that's where the first resistance point is. We see something new, we say it will never work, or we'll apply all the reasons as to why it won't work. And so we've got to move our organizations from being cynical, because we've got large balance sheets, large client bases, etc., and it's taken us many, many years to get to this point, to one in which we become curious and we experiment. And let's experiment, and if it works, let's scale it up a little bit more and see where its applications are, independent of what everyone else is doing. Because there's also this herd mentality, because my competitors are doing it, I need to do it as well. And that's the beauty about Singularity University. It stretches our thinking. I think if one of the key things that happens over the 2 to 3 days that people attend the event is that the cynicism that they bring into that session gets challenged with good logic and good fact. And so you walk away with your mind a little bit stretched, a little bit more open-minded, and hopefully a little bit more open to experiment inside organizations. The other mistake I think that happens is that, and we've got to guide our organizations and our clients in this regard, it's never about the technology. The fact that you implement the technology, and often that's how the conversations go. Oh, someone implemented the technology, look how successful they are. It's not about that. It's about how they looked at the problem. They defined what they were trying to solve for. And 9 out of 10 times, what you're trying to solve for is something your customer wants that they currently don't have. And that's actually where the start of the disruption happens. Where
Asking the right questions.
Asking the right questions, understanding your customer. We've all got data on our customers and our clients, but we've got very little data in terms of how those clients engage with the organization, because that happens before we start capturing data. And so the disruption comes because we've solved that problem, and it's coming quicker because we're using technology to solve that problem. It's not the other way around. And that's one of the biggest things we need to share with organizations. Your Uganda example, it wasn't the fact that they're using an e-commerce platform or mobile. They've obviously done something the consumer wants, and then through smart use of the technology, they got to the answer a lot quicker, a lot cheaper, a lot more impactful.
You know, I think it's because that person understood the truth. Because if you have the right data, you understand the truth. And that's actually very important these days, right? Because a lot of companies are saying we need to understand Facebook, we need to understand what's happening on Twitter. But that's just data. I think we need to figure out a way of understanding the truth, what's real and what's not. We're moving into a situation where there's so much data, we don't know what's real and what's not. And the people who can understand the truth, who can actually take away fact from fiction, I think they're going to make a big difference to this world. You look at what's happening right now. I mean, we have world-changing events based on incorrect data. And that's a reality. That's the world we live in today. And if we can help the continent understand how to cut through all of that and understand the truth, that's really powerful. And that's not artificial intelligence. That's intelligence.
I think the data explosion has been the catalyst for this whole wave of the new tech, because the data has enabled us to allow to ingest a lot more into computing and get more out of it. How's data helping you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, an interesting one as well, because to the truth and what's not truth, and also the other challenge you face in big corporates is you have lots of data everywhere. I mean, in our case, we've got lots of actuaries, and the minute I always say you have an actuary as an IT guy, you always nightmare because they're very intelligent, but they make copies. So yes, data is everywhere, and it is very key to the business, and it's going to be key to the future. But I think it's about how do we actually help the data to enable. The challenge, obviously, with that, and parallel to that, is the regulatory requirements and how people's privacy is going to be important. So, if I go back in time, it was easier 5, 6, or 10 years ago to say, I'm going to look at people like you and then analyze your data and then tell someone else, oh, go and buy the same shoes that Benjamin bought. Now people might ask you the question, how did you know that? So I think the balance between how do we protect the data and use it and know if they're the truth or not, who's the owner of the data, is going to be very powerful.
So how do we make sure that in 5 to 10 years, our kids are ready to take on this new industry, the new world that they're going to be living in?
And so if you look at education, that's definitely one of the key aspects and key pillars that we have to drive to change. Curriculum-wise, which is first, and I'm not going to take example of South Africa, but I think it's even overall worldwide, is how do we change the curriculum to be more forced into STEM or STEAM, what we call, if we put art in the middle. How do we drive this towards the first early age and the childhood, moving toward the current curriculum that needs to change now, but as well taking care of the people that just moved out of the curriculum which was existing, which was not proper to that. And I think one of the aspects as well is entrepreneurship. How do you develop the education around entrepreneurship that can develop this model, that people can do and create and use technology to create new business model? And then come back to innovation point is how do you create this innovation hub or incubators model that you can follow up with these guys to create a sustainable model? And I think this education from childhood towards creating business is what needs to be changed. And if you have to ask the policymakers to drive it into government, that's probably one of the biggest things to change rapidly, I would say.
I mean, what should they be learning in the curriculum? Should they be learning blockchain?
I think it's not, so it's part curriculum, but I think it's also part how you would raise your child. I don't have children myself, but I would raise them as being curious, adventurous human beings, not to accept everything that's being said to them, except what I would say to them, in terms of teaching them some discipline. But I think a curious mind is something that is just so extraordinary. And you raised the point when you attended Singularity, you last year, and yourself, learning something new is so amazing. And I think, you call it neuroplasticity in terms of how you open up this whole new highway in your mind for processing thoughts and emotions and a wide variety of amazing things. So I think just raising your kids to be more curious, to learn more things, and not just to, sit around playing fat cats.
So I have 3 daughters.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest problems we have is the way we use technology is actually sometimes takes kids away from understanding what it is so that they can understand how to apply it, right? When, they don't understand how that iPad works. They don't understand, and therefore they don't understand the decisions they make and how that's going to impact their life, because they are all, on social media, they're using data, they're accessing services from everywhere. So I think things like the Raspberry Pi project is probably one of the best things you can do. Get your kids to play around with this stuff, because then they will understand. I don't think any of us learned coding at university. I don't think any of us learned about tech. You learned yourself. You played a video game and you thought, I think I can build my own, right? And then you went and you picked up a computer, you build some stuff. I think that's what we need to do. We need to take that abstraction a little bit away from our kids, and yes, you know, but give them the opportunity to be kind of curious around that.
So
right?
It's about having that Lego builder mindset.
Correct.
In
Yes.
which, you know, you start off, you've got your Lego, the Lego's got a plan, and you learn how to use the Lego to build what the plan shows you to do. But after a while, the kids quickly learn that, you know, the plan's irrelevant and we lose the plan, but now I can build other things.
Moving on to Africa, how do you see exponential technology, you know, trying to help solve some of these big infrastructure problems? And can these technologies help us leapfrog, you know, these old legacy systems like roads?
So I think two great examples are sort of the access to finance across the African continent has always been an issue and will remain to be an issue, I think, for a considerable amount of time. Through the use of technology and partnerships with MNOs and also with a wide variety of other FMCGs, especially in the retailer space in Africa, we're seeing some progress being made. You know, in the light of blockchain technology, what we're using it specifically for is in the trade finance space. So trade is one of those beautiful things that you can use to facilitate economic growth across a variety of corridors. And we're using blockchain specifically in trade finance, not only in terms of this documentary trade flow, not only because it takes a really long time, but it opens you up. Because the ecosystem is so broad, your value chain is so broad, it opens you up to a lot of corruption, it opens you up to a lot of invoice fraud as well. So not only through digitizing this process, the documentary trade flow, but also how we facilitate payments across these parties with the help of smart contracts. It's helped us lay infrastructure or relay infrastructure in a certain way that decentralized and had everybody have one common viewpoint. There was one single source. And I think, you know, we see it across a variety of other industries. For example, De Beers is using blockchain to track the provenance of diamonds, for example. We know that, you know, blood diamonds, especially in Rwanda, and I think, you know, Malawi is sort of also coming up as one of those areas. It's a real infrastructural problem to solve, because the broader your value chain, the more, you know, corruption and sort of dirty hands you have that play a role. So I think technology is going to help you not only in terms of enforcing the integrity and the trust within ecosystems where trust has been broken or where trust has really never existed. And I think trust is such a beautiful concept for me personally within blockchain, as it decentralizes that. And I think, you know, as we move into a world where, you know, banking and financial services, or not banking, financial services should be for everybody. Technology is such a great way to achieve that.
I mean, when you hear the sharing economy, how do you think this plays into this Africa leapfrogging?
We tend to think of leapfrogging the lack of copper for telecommunications, or leapfrogging the lack of road and infrastructure for transportation. But if you take it one level up, what are the biggest barriers of entry into most industries? It's typically infrastructure, the location of the infrastructure, and the intelligence or the knowledge required to run that infrastructure. Let's maybe narrow it down now to schools and healthcare. The leapfrogging is moving beyond the infrastructure, the copper, the roads, etc., the buildings, you know, the dematerialization of that. But we're also seeing the democratization of knowledge through artificial intelligence. So perhaps we'll see a world one day in Africa where we don't need a doctor on site or a teacher on site to depart healthcare knowledge and to educate. And I think that's where we start having a phenomenal impact.
For us as corporates, we need to find the ways to train the future. We need to train the people of the future and how you're going to operate. And that is something we can play, okay? Because I don't think it's currently, as you say, the construct of universities today and how you go through it doesn't exist. So what corporates can do actually is how do we help the future actually to change? And that can be anywhere from your customer, that you mustn't forget about, to the people working with you. How's the future job going to look like? And how's your future customer going to look like? Because the risk we run at the moment with technology is we're actually moving further away from our customers sometimes, because you put technology in between. And I think coming back to you, what is the corporate role to play is actually how do we change people, help people to change rather? Because that's the challenge at the moment. What do you tell your child today to study, for example? I mean, what are you going to say to them? I mean, I studied engineering. It was very easy those days. It was engineering was a doctor, or you become a teacher, or you play sport when I was young. Now you've got all of this, but what does it mean? Because if someone come to you with a CV today, and his CV is, I studied one subject engineering, one in teaching, 1 year, 1 day, people are going to laugh at you. But as a corporate, we can change that.
So it's no longer about the degree that you studied, but more about how did your degree teach you how to think.
Yes. Are you
that you can apply
curious?
to the
Are you
workplace.
prepared? Are you open? And then, as I said, our customers. I mean, that's the other thing is the company successful now is let customers talk to them. And listen to them, not just, oh yes, and that's the big one. I mean,
we had a long discussion before in terms of smart use of technology with the example in Uganda, and I think what a lot of corporates are doing, us including a wide variety of other parties, is the way that you design is so far removed from the customer. So we're allowing the people that actually design and run the business to speak to the customers, because I think, as all corporates, we really love our customers, but we're super scared in terms of actually going to speak to them and finding out what they want. So you mentioned a couple of great points, which is actually, I think, how you expose how you expand your mind and how you expose yourself to a world broader than yourself is to actually talk to people, right? And I think you've brought up this great point in terms of leadership time and time again, is that if we want a structural change, if we want to change in terms of how do we incorporate innovation a little bit more better, if we actually want to disrupt, if we actually want to reevaluate our role in society, my goodness, just go and talk to the guys and find out what they actually want. Because I mean, the sharing platform that you refer to, which could only be Airbnb, for example, didn't come up with this, idea sitting in San Francisco thinking about how they're going to code the tech, right? So I think also this revolution change that is necessary, and I think we've all been preaching about customer centricity for years until that kingdom come, but until we actually go and talk to these people, we will not disrupt ourselves. We're not going to change our businesses. We're not going to change how we train our people, and we're not going to change this thing that is coming, which is called the future, right?
I think the first thing we need to do as corporates is we need to stop talking about Africa, because Africa is not one country. East Africa has specific challenges, specific opportunities. Within East Africa, you've got different regions, you've got different countries. I just use that as an example. You go to West Africa, you go to Central Africa. These countries all have different challenges, different cultures, different languages that they speak, and I think it's a huge opportunity to have a diverse set of opportunities. Now, when we talk about future-proofing Africa, I think technology gives us an opportunity. The simple mobile explosion in Africa allowed us to communicate. That has already happened. Great. But if we are truly to be citizens of the world and every single person is going to be productive and have a better life in the future, I think we need to use technology to bring dignity to the people in Africa. Let me give you an example. This is a very controversial example. Land, right? The guy who owned the hut, did he have a title deed? Now in Africa, if I'm living in a rural environment, how do I get a title deed? That is a potential use of blockchain to make sure that all of a sudden I have collateral to get access to capital to be able to be economically active. That's how we change the world, right? There are 6 million micro enterprises in Nigeria today, people who are earning, who own their own businesses because of the mobile networks that have been placed there. That's how technology changes. That is a massive number, right? And I actually think my estimation is that's what we know. I actually think it's more, but let's assume 6 million. It's a big enough number to work with, right?
But there are 170 million people, so...
Exactly, right? I mean, it's a large market. But the reality is, imagine if every single person in Africa had a digital title deed that they could use to access financial services, that they could use to actually build their futures on. That would make a real difference to future-proofing Africa. Because the problem is right now, and I think as corporates, all corporates, we see Africa as one thing. We see it as dangerous and risky, and we talked about, being able to take risks. But we need to be very careful that we don't move from into another exploitative environment, because where we are today, we're going to be unsuccessful. The most successful, at least when we look at it from a South African perspective, companies that have been successful in Africa, number one, they understand it's not one continent, it's not one country. There's different regions, and each thing is very different. You look at it from the successful retailers or mobile operators. They've understood it. And secondly, they're purpose driven. I want to make lives better for people.
That's part of our mission. Our mission is to bring everyone together, to collaborate, and government is one of the leaders of our continent. So we need to bring government in and expose us to them. And we are, last year we had a nice delegation from the South African Reserve Bank, and this year we're looking at a whole bunch of other government individuals and bodies to attend. So we're reaching the end of our session. This has been a really exciting conversation. Thank you all so much. I just want to, in wrapping up, let's just go around and discuss what are some of the things you're excited about seeing at the summit this year?
For me,
or learning.
I would love to see learning how blockchain as well can help us towards this additive manufacturing, managing IP, for example, these type of things. I would love to hear about it. And additive manufacturing is one of the aspects, to be honest, that I would love as well to see how it will bring awareness around it. And it can create jobs in Africa, and I think that's an opportunity.
So I'm, without a doubt, I'm really looking forward to your 3D offering that you bring into the table. I think that is, and on a serious note, I think that is a very important technology that you bring onto our shores. I'm looking forward to just being challenged again. It doesn't matter how many of these SingularityU events I attend, there's always something new that comes up. And it's not just about the technology, it's a new way of looking at the problem. It's a new philosophy, providing us with a lens to look at things. I'm very excited about that. And then without a doubt, I'm very excited about the size of the summit this year. Being proudly South African, I like it when our name is up in lights. And we're heading to make this the largest SingularityU summit ever held. And it's going to be held in Johannesburg. So I'm looking forward to being part of that.
I think for me it would be like, how it would be good to see how Africans are going to solve Africa's problems. I mean, if you look at the growth, they say we're going to be 4 billion people at some point. This is the only place where growth is left. I mean, there's some very good talks on TED Talk with Asia is flattening out, Americas are flattening out. This continent is going to grow, and we should solve the problems. And I think the thing for us is that we should also not always look at the outside world to come and help us, Europe or China or Americas. We should say, no, you can support us, yes, you can give us input, but let's solve our own problems. And I think these are things like Singularity University is where we're going to see that Africans are going to stand up and solve Africa's problems. And that for me would be, it's always great to see it. I mean, it's not the only time that just happened, but you go to these events and that's what I'm looking for.
I mean, I have to echo that. I think it's really about Africa understands Africa better than anybody else. And we've got to stop looking externally for some of the answers, because we've delivered some of the solutions already internally. How can we expand on that? I think just in general, just getting my mind stretched again. I think these are great discussions. I mean, I've been party to a number of these sort of roundtables, and they all generally say the same things. We all understand the same things. We share the same frustrations, but we leave them and we go back to, cold reality, and you deal with the regular processes of corporate life and bureaucracy of corporate life. So just taking that step out, stretching our minds a bit, and hopefully coming out of it with one or two, yes, something we can go back and try at a very real practical level. I think that would be good, because I think sometimes they're great for thinking, but you can't go back and talk about it at a practical level. How can I change an existing process and try something new? Because they tend to be, by their nature, these big, ambitious, scale type of initiatives.
That's back to Valter was saying, is that it needs to have follow through. It needs to have an implementation plan. Yeah.
My mind personally was blown last year at SingularityU. I think I was the happiest those 2 days the whole year. Not that it was a bad year, but I think also with these technologies, because they're pretty emergent and they change so quickly. I mean, when I started off with blockchain, or when I just started to read about AI and what it looks like today and what it's been used for today, is two completely different things. So I'm really eager to see, what the new uses are, how these technologies have changed. And I mean, to Manny's point is, and also, our discussion on convergence is that actually that the people that attend the summit should use it as a discussional point. Yeah,
I think it's all been said, but applying these disruptive technologies and seeing how it actually works, that for me is the most amazing thing. Little examples, things that come out from left field, those are the things that are going to excite me. And I think it's always the networking. It's those interesting discussions you have outside of the presentation that's the best. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, so thank you all so much for joining us today. Us as SingularityU South Africa, we are, we're hoping that everyone's going to be equipped with this mindset and the skill set to tackle this future. And it's about the networks, it's about these partnerships that have been created, and about these convergence and these things that creating things out of the unknown. So that's very exciting for us. And thank you all for attending today.
Thank you very much.
Right.